This is my mountain. But this rocky terrain is not the final look for it. We've got multiple layers that we are going to be adding to it, including vegetation and buildings. So let's get started with today's episode. Welcome back everyone to the Project Nodenium server. Our work on this mountain is going to begin in this corner, and I've got a couple of different things planned out for what we are going to be doing, including filling in this middle area, which is rather blank, adding in some buildings, and adding in the vegetation. So by the end of today's episode, we are going to have a pretty good idea of how this mountain project is going to look once it's all completed. Working on this mountainside is going to require a few materials that we don't have. So the first thing that we are going to need to do today is build a bone meal farm, and I've dug out this area where we are going to be building it, and we're also going to decorate it so that it matches the rest of this base. But the reason that we are going to need the bone meal farm is because we are also going to need to collect a bunch of pale moss. We are going to need to collect a lot of bushes. We're going to need to collect a lot of the firefly bushes. It's just going to be really useful to have easy access to a lot of bone meal. But this bone meal farm is going to require a lot of redstone materials, and what I have here is definitely not going to be enough for that. Fortunately, the server has a shop for redstone materials, and let's see whether or not we'll be able to buy everything that we need here. We are going to need to get some sticky pistons. I think that should just about do it. We're going to need some dispensers. We're going to need some droppers. Let's also get some note blocks, some crafters, and I think we should be able to craft up everything else that we're going to need. Also, I don't know if you can hear it, but there is definitely a warden sound in this area, which I think might be related to this loot cage building. Definitely makes for some interesting shopping when you've got a warden nearby. I've now crafted up all of the redstone materials that we're going to need. We've also got the other materials that we're going to need to build this farm, which means I think we're now ready to get it built. So we have finished building the farm. I'm just adding in the bone meal that I have to the dispensers, but we should be able to give this a test, and let's see if we can get this farm up and running. Now, if I remember correctly from a previous build, it does take a little bit to get it started. Maybe? I don't know. We're not getting the water. Why is the water not going? That's not a good sign. So I found the issue. It was this repeater right here. It was supposed to be on 2 ticks and it was on 1 tick. So when the signal came through, this pulse extender didn't get activated, which didn't send the signal up to activate the trapdoors. But everything is now working, and I think we've got a fully functioning bone meal farm. Before we are going to start getting any bone meal, though, we're going to have to let the farm run for a little bit so that all of these dispensers that we have down here are going to fill up with bone meal, and then once those are filled, we'll have plenty of bone meal coming out that we're going to be able to use, which will give us plenty of time to get this room decorated while the farm's running. The room is now completed, and while I was putting in the decorations, I also added in an auto crafting system. So you can see we've got the crafter underneath this chest, and all of the bone meal is being converted into bone blocks. So even though we only have about 9 stacks of bone blocks, that is actually quite a bit of bone meal. And then in this barrel, I've got the 2 different moss types. So if I want to switch over from regular moss, I can use the pale moss here, and all I'll need to do is go over and underneath the farm, and I'll be able to switch out the moss block. See if I can get over there. Yep, so this moss block right here, we just have to switch that out. and then we'll be able to get pale moss. And to collect up the moss, we can just stand up here on this platform and we'll be able to get a lot of moss really easily by just running along here. Here in the back, I've also put together a little system that's going to allow us to get a bunch of bushes or grass if we need to. And to use it, we're just going to convert these bone blocks into bone meal. We're going to add the bone meal to the dispensers. And then if we take one of these firefly bushes and we set it right there, we can turn this on and then we should be able to just get a whole bunch of these real quick. And we can also use it to get glow lichen as well. But now it's time to take a look at how this is all going to work together and why did we spend all of that time building a bone meal farm. So I've got the 4 primary blocks that we're going to be using to add some vegetation to this area, and we're going to be making use of some of this pale moss, and we're going to sprinkle that in with the rocks that we have. We're also going to add in some of these bushes. So we're going to put some of the grass blocks down. We're going to put down the firefly bushes. And we will also add the dead bushes in as well, just to mix it up. And when we're all done, we're going to have something that's a little bit like this, and we're going to sprinkle that throughout. Now, in between where we're going to be adding in the vegetation, we're also going to be adding in some buildings. And we're going to do something special with those buildings, but I don't want to spoil it yet. So we're going to wait until we get into the actual building process to see how that's going to look. But first, we're going to need to collect some resources. All of the blocks that we've collected up are now in these shulker boxes right here. We have a total of 66 different types of blocks that we're going to be using, so it's going to take a little bit of careful inventory management to get this process started. But you know what that means. It's time to get started building. So let's get going. This corner of the mountainside is now getting pretty close to being done, and we've got a pretty good idea of what the rest of this project is going to look like and the style and theme for this build. And I've been a bit nervous getting started with this project because it's a lot more detailed than any ruin that I've done before, and there were some interesting challenges that I came across as I was putting it together. One of the biggest challenges was what to do with the cracks in the building, because originally I wasn't going to have the black concrete there, but without the black concrete, you really wouldn't be able to see the cracks because all of the deep slate would just blend together, and the back of the building would just seem like the front of the building and you wouldn't know what was going on. So I used a high contrast block like the black concrete to really make it stand out. The other detail that needed to be added in was a little bit of color. So I went with these blue windows, and I think that helps to make things just a little bit more dynamic and interesting to look at. But enough about that. Let's take a closer look at some of the areas in this build. Now, the end of the bridge has seen a little bit of damage. We've got chunks of it missing on both sides. Grass is starting to grow in. We've got a dead tree in the center here, and there's a lot of debris, so you just gotta pick your way down the stairs. And then as we come down to the road, you can see chunks of the road are missing, chunks of the bridge are missing. This river is mostly starting to dry out, and it's going to lead down into this area. And originally I was thinking that we would have the road go down the middle, but now I'm thinking what we're going to do instead is we're going to have a canal, and then there's going to be bridges going back and forth all the way down. As we get up into the build though, you can see that we are in the pale garden biome, which is now creating the effect that I wanted for this project. So we've got the grayed out sky, and I think that adds just a little bit more atmosphere to make this ruin feel a little bit scarier, because it's not all bright and cheerful. It's a little bit gray and depressing now, and especially the water. It's not the vibrant blue that you would normally see. It's this sort of gray water, and with it not filling up the entire riverbed, we've got some areas where it's dried out. We've got the roots, and I think everything just came together exactly as I was hoping it would. But even though this is a ruin, I did want to make it easy to walk through, so it is possible to go all the way around these paths without having a lot of obstacles in the way. It just looks like there's obstacles in the way, and we can walk all the way down here. We can take a look at where our starter base is at and the bridge. But probably the time where it gets really interesting is as we get into night, because all of these firefly bushes that are scattered about are going to add in the firefly particles, and that just makes it a little bit more magical in this area. And it was something that I wasn't really planning for. The reason I went with the firefly bushes was because I wanted something that would fit between the grass and the dead bushes. And so we've got green and brown in those firefly bushes. But now we end up with all of these particles everywhere, and I just think it's so great. I love those bushes. This is such a perfect effect for this area. But there we go. That is the first part of our main base project for this season, and we have a long ways to go. There's a lot of mountainside here to cover, and there are a lot of builds that we still need to put in to fill it all the way up. I'm super excited with the progress that we've made. I'm super excited with the direction that this project is taking, and I can't wait to get the rest of it done. But that's where we're going to have to leave it for today. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a like. If you want to see more, please subscribe. And until next time, see you later.